if I take this and walk around with it, am I okay? Okay, I'm not gonna like blast high pitch in my nose for years and years. Okay, good. I feel a little distant, and I'm never comfortable being a little distant from people. Do you know what I mean? So that would be a senator. No disrespect to Bob. Maybe we could talk about that a little bit. Shall we talk about that? First of all, thank you for inviting me. And I know it's the organizers, your party leadership out here figured out the secret to getting me to an event. Call my wife, right? Is that smart or what? You know, when Chris, my wife Chris, first became my scheduler in the state, something that she does, she volunteers. People at first thought it was the craziest idea in the world until they started seeing me everywhere, and they realized she didn't want me at home that much. And but what she knows, this wonderful woman from Candu, North Dakota, is that she knows what's important to me. She knows what's important to North Dakota. She knows what's important to North Dakotans. She knows that the small towns are the moral compass of our state, and our state is the moral compass of our country. And she sees to it that I get out and about. So thank Chris. And I do on a regular basis. Also, I presume the food would be as good as it was. So well done, cooks. It was great. I thought I'd spend a thank you.
On that note, the Nook cooks just told me there's lots of food left, so please help yourself.
Seconds, please. So, I thought since it's February, and we have all these wonderful politicians here, you know, one of the things, Bob talked about the fact that I go back a long ways. I know it's hard to believe for a guy as young as me that I have as much history as I do. But I remember, you guys, when I was chairman of the North Dakota Republican Party, I had a full head of hair as senator. But I had a lot of energy. But there were only 3 statewide elected officials that were Republican. Al remembers this very well because he was part of the first class of Republicans to come into office. There were 2 public service commissioners and an auditor. And we had a slight majority in the House of Representatives, but we were in the minority in the state Senate at the time. Hard to believe, isn't it, when you look back on that? And along came, you know, in that election year, Bill Clinton, and I was this young party chairman who didn't, you know, never took no for an answer. Didn't let anything sort of get in my way. I plowed through walls when I probably should have, you know, been a little more graceful about getting around them. But at an event like this, you didn't have a whole bunch of state elected officials introduced and a whole bunch of legislators introduced like we do today. And that's not a small matter. Because Republicans have proven in North Dakota that we can govern, that we govern best. And imagine this statistic. Prior to Ed Schaefer being elected governor, Republicans had had the governorship in North Dakota 4 out of the previous 32 years. So people that think that this is a bright red state, forget. The seat that I hold, your seat, was held by Democrats for 30 years until Obamacare was passed. And what does that tell you? What that tells you is that policies matter, that philosophy matters, that results matter. And why have we been able to hold these seats and just grow our influence and grow the offices we hold is because of the way we govern, because of the way Republicans, you know, because of the policies that we put forward. Now, we had 4 years out of 32, we had the governorship. Ed Schaefer was elected, and we've never given it up. All we've done is grown our majorities. But I forever remember when it was the other way around. And it's a constant reminder that we aren't entitled to any of these offices that we hold. These offices belong to the people that we represent. And that we should never get haughty or arrogant about this, but always stay connected to the people we work for, lest we forget what it is that we believe. State legislators have never had the luxury of being removed from the people they work for. It's one of the great blessings of a citizen legislature. It's also one of the great blessings of holding a statewide office in our state. Now, I have 434 colleagues, close friends, all of them. you can't imagine how difficult they are to work with. None of them are as reasonable as you people. But the founders made it difficult on purpose. But nearly all of them, all but 7 of us, represent something other than a state. So I always say I have a small state but a large congressional district. And so for me, and for people like Christy Noem in South Dakota, and Greg over in Montana, and Liz Cheney over in Wyoming, and Don Young up in Alaska, we have big territories to cover. So we drive a lot more than other members of Congress. And it's worth every mile. We celebrate in February, of course, the birthday of Abraham Lincoln, the first Republican president. The most accessible president in the history of our country. Why do I talk about access? I'm going to talk about it because it's so important to the foundations of being representatives of the people. Abraham Lincoln, do you know that while he was president, he had office hours 2 days a week where anybody could come to the Oval Office and petition. And he also had cabinet meetings twice a week, and then wandered around from cabinet office to meet with cabinet officials in their offices. He led by wandering around long before it was a class or a topic at a business summit somewhere. He also went. You might remember the movie Lincoln, that opening scene where he's at the telegraph office waiting at the war room for word from the field. He always liked first-hand information. That's why he met with people. One time in 1863 maybe, but one time General Charles Helpine came to see the president in the Oval Office. And he was stunned to see all these people waiting in front of him. And when he finally got in to see Lincoln, he said, "Mr. President, you need to learn to do what we generals do and screen your visitors." The president wasn't very impressed. And he didn't fire him. He did fire other generals for similar behavior, for not being as connected to their troops as they ought to be. But he said, though the tax on my time is heavy, no hours of my day are better employed than those that bring me into the direct contact and atmosphere of the average of the whole of the people. And he said, men who only work in official capacity are apt to become merely official. Don't you love that? Merely official. And they are apter through time to forget that they only hold office in a representative capacity. This is why I love what I do as a member of the People's House. This is what the founders had in mind when they created the People's House. They had quite a debate about whether they'd have a House of Lords or a House of Commons. And, of course, nowadays, every other country that has a House of Lords is getting rid of theirs. We just keep empowering ours, or they empower themselves with this notion that, let's call it 60 votes, and, never mind about holding the floor. Let's just go golfing and say we're opposed something. That way we can hold up the show forever. That's why there's about 400 bills sitting in the Senate that have already passed the House of Representatives. In case you're wondering why you only read about a Senate vote every month or so. This disconnect with the people, big deal in our country. And it's what led to the rise of Donald Trump. The man, nobody since Lincoln himself is so connected with regular people as Donald Trump. And you may not like certain things he does, or maybe not like the way he does certain things, but this is why he's so connected to the people, because he talks directly to them. I had a CNN reporter about 2 weeks ago. This guy tried to do me in one other time based on some rumor spread by a consultant. And I don't have much time for CNN. I go on the network about every 10th time they ask, just for sport. But he said to me, "Congressman Cramer," they get the camera up and he sticks a microphone in my face. He says, "Congressman Cramer, do you think that Donald Trump's a genius? He says he's a genius. Do you agree that he's a genius?" And I said, "Gee, Manu, there's a test for that." "Well, do you think he's a genius?" And I said, "Well, have him take the test. I suppose by saying I know this much. I'm pretty sure he's a political genius. He's a marketing genius. So you're saying he's a genius." And I said, "Well, let me put it another way. He's so much smarter than you that he's got you tied in knots and you don't even know you're in a knot." That ended the interview and they never played it. Go figure. But think of, besides being connected with people, think of what this man has done in 1 year. He has appointed successfully more appellate court judges in 1 year than any other president. Neil Gorsuch enough was, if all he did was got Neil Gorsuch on the United States Supreme Court, he did more than most presidents. We passed, and he signed into law, 15 Congressional Review Act pieces of legislation. The record previous to this year, or to the last 2017, was 1. 15. 15 of them that roll back things like the stream buffer zone rule and the education rule that Barack Obama signed on his way out the door to roll back all of the progress we made in giving local control back to education. BLM 2.0, how you manage federal lands. All kinds of environmental and energy regulations, 15 of them. And who could forget the largest tax cut and largest regulatory cuts in American history? It's not an accident that the Federal Reserve is now predicting a 5% GDP growth in the first quarter of this year. It's not surprising that you're seeing thousands of dollars, or as Nancy Pelosi calls them, crumbs, going into the paychecks of average working class Americans every single week, month, and year. And so, in fact, he just called, he and I had a long talk just on Wednesday about this very thing. He said, Kevin, the tax cuts are working better than we ever thought they would. And I said, Mr. President, I'm not shocked. There are trillions of dollars waiting on the sidelines to be invested in the best place in the world. And you created an atmosphere where that best place in the world is right here in the United States of America. Through regulatory and tax cuts and rollbacks. So I'm proud of him. I'm proud to call him our president. I defend him. I was one of the first to endorse him, and I'll probably be one of the last to keep defending him. It's not even defending him, it's explaining him. You know how often I go on Canadian TV? I'm the chairman of the Northern Border Caucus, and so I go on their CNBC station up there a lot and talk about NAFTA and trade deals and pipelines. That's one of their favorite topics. And I often tell them when they worry about the trade deals and NAFTA, I'll say, you guys, remember, this is Donald Trump. He knows that we are the $20 trillion economy and you're the $2 trillion economy. If you doubt him, call his bluff. But I wouldn't. I wouldn't. He's the big dog, you're the little dog. We like you, you need us. This is intuitive to him. He doesn't roll over for political correctness or expediency. He is in control. And at the end of the day, but also remember this about him. He insisted on a 15% corporate tax rate. We wanted 25. When we finally came to 20, he said, that's it, I won't go any higher, and he settled for 21. He sets the parameters of the debate, and then at the end of it, he knows how to compromise to get the job done. Lincoln was very similar. Lincoln was a man of great conviction. He wanted smaller government, more effective government. He also loved a strong defense. His execution of the war was clear evidence to that. But he also understood what this president understands. That you can only lead from a position of strength, but you also have at the heart of it the love of liberty. Lincoln once said in a speech in Edwardsville, Illinois, he said, what is it that constitutes the bulwarks of our liberty and independence? He says, it's not our army or our navy, it's not our armaments or our bristling seacoasts. No, he said, what constitutes our liberty, what stands against tyranny is the love of liberty which God has placed in our hearts. And he said, the man or the woman who prizes liberty as the heritage of all men in all places everywhere is what stands against tyranny. Isn't that something? And he said, if you remove that love of liberty, you plant the seeds of despotism at your own doors. Just last week, Chris and I were with when we were with the President and the Vice President, but Secretary Tillerson and Secretary Mattis gave a presentation on the juxtaposition of our position of might and diplomacy. Great couple of guys. If you ever get a chance to see the two of them together, it's remarkable how well they understand each other's positions. And Secretary Mattis, this guy known as Mad Dog, right? We had to change the law to allow him to be the Secretary of Defense. Much like General Washington, if you're ever in the Capitol and you take a tour and you see the beautiful artwork in the rotunda, there's a beautiful picture, great big painting of General Washington retiring his commission as an officer. Because remember, the military doesn't run our country, civilians do. And so Mad Dog we had to change the law to allow him as a civilian, so close to his previous service, to be the Secretary of Defense. And in talking about our might, our military might, begging the Congress for a $716 billion defense budget, which we did give him last week, he said, but the power of inspiration is greater than the power of intimidation. Isn't that something? Even the defense secretary said, the power of inspiration is greater than the power of intimidation. And so, we as the beacons of liberty throughout the world have this role to play. It's beyond just our military might. It's what we demonstrate day after day in being the most generous country in the world. I'm going to tell a little story, a personal story, and then wrap up. And then you guys have a lot of business to do, and a lot of other politicians here from. But I'd be happy to answer one or two questions if you have time allows. Along that line of inspiring, last August the president called and asked if I'd go on what's called a presidential delegation. We go on a lot of congressional delegations, but he asked me to go on a presidential delegation. I've only been on one congressional delegation because I don't want to travel around the world. I want to be home. I like it here. And once in a while it's important. And he said, no, I want you to go to Kazakhstan with Secretary Perry on an energy mission. And so it was Secretary Perry who ended up not going because of the hurricanes. And then it was a member of the National Security Council for Southern and Central Asia, and one finance person. And so Kazakhstan's a long ways away. As you probably know, it's positioned between China and Russia. It was the first former Soviet country that went independent, but it's the last one that still has a Soviet-era president. In fact, I just saw their ambassador. He came out to Bismarck to see me after the trip, and then he was just at the prayer breakfast the other morning. And I thought I was going for this energy summit, which was the main diplomatic reason to go for. The World Expo, 115 countries. But the real point was to sit in meetings with the president, and another one with the prime minister, another one with the foreign minister, to talk specifically about the new policy on Afghanistan. You might recall that Donald Trump ran on a non-intervention stand, and then changed his mind after he became president. But he chose a different route. He said, we're going to stay in Afghanistan, but I'm not going to tell you how many. I'm not going to tell you what we're going to do tactically or strategically. I'm not going to tell you when we're going to withdraw, and we're going to give our troops everything they need to be successful. And I'm like, wow, okay. So I'm talking to the Russian media, and I'm talking to the president on all of this and on some other stuff. And then we fly home. And on the way home, we had to spend the night in Ramstein. And for those of you in the airports, you know Ramstein is the largest base we have in Europe. There are 65,000 Americans, the largest civilian or American population, U.S. citizens outside of the United States. And of course, Landstuhl, our very famous European military hospital, is there, just outside of the air base. And so since we had to spend the night because of the long flight, I asked the State Department personnel if I could go visit the hospital, realizing there's not much shooting going on. I thought it'd be a good time to tour it. So they lined it up, and I go in and get all the briefings and those things. That's very cool. And then they take me on a tour. And you guys will love this. Only North Dakota. Only North Dakota. I go to one of the units. The first unit we get to, and there's this young captain who's the head nurse. And his name's Justin. And Justin says, Congressman, do you know where Flasher is? I said, come on. Seriously? He said, yeah, that's where I'm from. I'm from Flasher. I said, of course you are. Of course you are. I said, well, do your folks still live there? Oh, yeah. He said, Dad's retired now. Mom still works at the school. And told me about his whole family. It was great. And then he said, would you mind visiting a patient? There's a patient here who heard you come wanting to see you. I said, of course, I'd be happy to. What's his name? His name's Andrew. He's in this room right here. He's from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I said, great, let's go see Andrew. So going up, and I walk into Andrew's room, and there laying on this hospital bed is this long, thin black man with a smile from ear to ear, hooked up to a bunch of tubes and neck brace on, and he's an interpreter for some Navy SEALs on a second tour of duty. And I said, Andrew, he shakes my hand, do you know John Thune? I said, very well, yeah, I know Christy, know him very well. And he said, I helped on John Thune's first campaign, and I was working for him when he beat Tom Daschle, and I'm thinking, wow, this guy's great. And I'm sitting there worried about him, and he's all enthused and excited. And I said, well, I'll tell him hi when I see him. He said, well, I said, Andrew, where are you from? I mean, I know you're from Sioux Falls, but how'd you get there? Because clearly your accent gives it away. You don't talk like you're in the movie Fargo, you know. And he said, well, actually, I'm from South Sudan. Do you know anything about it? And I said, I do a little bit. He said, well, I was from Sudan, but it became South Sudan. You know about Sudan? I said, I do. It was one of the black eyes in American history in terms of the lateness with which we intervened in your crisis. And he said, that's right, but you intervened. You intervened. George Bush knew that what was going on in the United States, intervened. And today, I'm on my second tour of duty on behalf of our country. And he said, and I said, Andrew, I got to tell you, I've just been spending a lot of time talking to Russian media about the new policy in Afghanistan, because intervention is not a popular term in political circles in the United States right now. He said, I understand that, sir. But I'm a free man because you intervened. And he said, you have to help people understand that. And I said, I get it, I understand, and I know there's a lot more to it, but right now we're kind of war-weary. And intervention is a hard thing to sell to those other 700,000 people in my state. And without missing a beat, without blinking an eye, without taking a breath, Andrew looked right at me and said, Congressman, you can't change the world if you don't intervene in the world. And the reason you're in Congress is because those other 700,000 people don't know what you know. And I thought, that's representative government, see. And I had a new conviction about some of this. And I said, Andrew, I'll carry your message back home. We're so blessed in this country, aren't we? And sometimes we forget how blessed we are and how special we are. And Abraham Lincoln understood the importance of it. You know that Abraham Lincoln in his first inaugural address never mentioned God one time. Not one time. If you believe presidents, after they become presidents, can grow in their spiritual faith, watch this President Donald Trump. Compare him to a year ago. Abraham Lincoln didn't mention God one time. In his second inaugural address, 701 words. He mentioned God 14 times. Quoted scripture 4 times. Talked about prayer 3 times. With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right. Let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nations, for we shall care for him who shall not go into battle, for his widow and his orphan, and to do all to achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace for ourselves and for all nations. We have a tremendous battle these days, over the craziest things, don't we? Whether we should stand for the national anthem, really, people? Really? My favorite verse of the Star-Spangled Banner is the 4th. We all learn the first. Well, thus be it ever when free men shall stand between their loved home and the war's desolation. Blessed with victory and peace may this heaven-rescued land praise the power that has built and preserves us a nation. Then conquer we must, if God is our trust, and conquer we must if our cause is just, and this be our motto, in God may we trust. And the Star-Spangled Banner in triumph shall wave, o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. Thanks for what you do for our party and for our country and for our state. God bless you.